Have you ever wondered if there's a job that involves growing plants, but without having to get your hands dirty? There is, and it's called hydroponics. I'm Liam Callahan, and for the past 4 years I've been studying biology at UCCS, and today I'm going to tell you what hydroponics is, what you need to know about hydroponics, and what you need to know as a greenhouse manager. So what is hydroponics? An article written in 1997 by Jensen from the University of Arizona defines hydroponics as a technology for growing plants in a nutrient solution with or without the use of an artificial medium to provide mechanical support. Hydroponics is a subset of hydroculture, which includes many non-traditional farming methods. Generally speaking, soilless farming. This is where roots are suspended in a solution with an inert substrate such as gravel, sand, or peat. What makes hydroponics so great is how little land and water is used in compared to traditional farming methods. So on a traditional farm, you've got your massive acres of tilled land, and you water that and fertilize it constantly, but a lot of it just ends up seeping down through the soil or becoming runoff from rain and not actually being absorbed and used by your crops. So knowing all this, we can get more into the specifics. So site selection, this is where your greenhouse is going to be set up, and it's going to depend on two major factors. One of those is light, and the other is temperature. You're going to want those to be consistent all year round for consistent growing cycles. It's best to use natural light over artificial light, as artificial is very, very expensive to continue to run. So rather than worry about building your greenhouse in the middle of a city center where you're close to your customers, it's actually better to focus more on the natural elements that you need to contend with. And it's much, much cheaper to transport your crops than it is to actually light them. Light is also directly proportional to your crop yield, so 1% decrease in light is a 1% decrease in crop yield. It's very important to keep that consistent throughout a growing cycle. Water quality is something else to consider. You're going to need to be able to analyze local water supply and see if it's usable for your purpose. So looking at pH, alkalinity, soluble salts, calcium, magnesium, and determine if it's suitable for you. Next is nutrients. This is entirely dependent on the crops you're growing. Some, for example, like a tomato plant or a tree, are going to require a lot different things, and a tree is just generally going to need a lot more water. Plants need certain levels of different nutrients, things like nitrogen, magnesium, phosphates, and so on. So the solution at the end of the day is entirely dependent on what you're growing. Substrate is going to play another major role. While it is inert, it can act like a sponge, holding and releasing the nutrients that you give it. Things like gravel and sand will work, and you can also go the route with no substrate at all. But something like peat is desirable for its ability to mimic a sponge. Though peat's very good, it also has its drawbacks. So it's very abundant and very cheap to get. Harvesting it releases CO2, lots of CO2. And according to a 2016 review written by Barrett for Science Horticulture, they actually found that consumers are willing to pay more for environmentally friendly options. So an example would be core, which is coconut waste or coconut fibers, might actually be more profitable since you can sell at a higher price. Next we have pest control. This ties back in with where your greenhouse is actually set up. So you're going to need to look at the environment and see what bugs, insects, what vectors, what you're going to have to deal with, set up some sort of action plan to counteract that. So for example, if you've got aphids eating at your plants, little tiny beetles, you could bring in some parasitic wasps to take care of them. Just having a plan ahead of time is the important thing to counteract any issues and to prevent crop loss. Lastly, and most importantly, is going to be what a greenhouse manager needs to be capable of. So you're going to need to be able to conduct interviews and hire proper candidates, creating a positive work environment, so you need to be able to construct the rails for employees to follow and empower them to act in their own manner you choose. This way, employees feel in control and trust can be made between you and your employees. This leads to a positive and productive workplace that makes employees actually want to work. Crop selection This is entirely dependent on you. You can grow pretty much anything with hydroponics. Fruits, vegetables, flowers, herbs. A couple examples would be like tomatoes, banana, basil, things like that. Scheduling, so set up a schedule, plan out who needs to do what when, deal with anybody calling out, things like that. Supplies, this is going to be what you need, when you need it, who you're getting it from, how much you need, so on and so forth. Planning ahead is very important here. Budgeting, very, very important aspect. You need to make a profit at the end of the day. So setting up your budget so you can pay your employees, pay yourself, buy the supplies you need, and keep within that budget to meet profit margins. Growing a farm, this is dependent on where your farm you're running. So you might be very local and you need to get the attention out. Let people know you exist. Let people know you're selling. Calculate the cost and set a price. So calculate that wholesale price if you're selling to a vendor, or whatever price you set for yourself at a market, so that you can make a profit without, with competing with other local businesses. Hydroponics uses 90% less water than traditional farming methods. So today I told you what hydroponics is, what you need to know about hydroponics, and what you need to know as a greenhouse manager. Thank you, and I hope you have a better understanding of soilless cultivation.